Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I'm one of your co-hosts, Rico Borrego.
I'm your other co-host, Tony Borrego.
And this is the podcast known as Relatively Sound, the podcast that supports local and underground artists. And today we have one of those on the podcast, and that is friend of the podcast, Chris Antonucci. Chris, how you doing?
Hey, long time no talk.
Yeah, for our listeners who listen to the last episode, you'll know we had Chris on to talk about some Pearl Jam. But today we're doing something a little different. If you heard our episode we did a couple months ago, we covered Tony's first studio album he released, Good Cause. And we're going to be doing a similar thing here with Chris's first album that he released, titled Circus. He released it in 2021. And, you know, we thought it'd be perfect to have him on today, as, you know, the three of us, we, you know, we're musicians. We play music as well as listen to it, of course. But I always like talking about songwriting, and I know Tony loves talking about production. And, you know, we thought it would be perfect to do all that here with Chris's album. So, Chris, why don't you just give us like a brief, you know, description of the album, when you released it, all that good stuff.
All right, well, I'll do my best. I guess it kind of started when I was in my band in full effect. I would just like start writing songs maybe 2016, 2017, and kind of just like, I don't want to say stockpiling, but just like try my hand at songwriting. I would present it to the group, and like, you know, none of the stuff really stuck. So I just like kind of just basically shell them, or just like, and then just continue writing and basically practicing and growing as a writer. So when the group broke up in August 2019, maybe a couple weeks later, did like my first session, I guess, at my cousin's studio here in Connecticut, where I did a song. That was a good exercise in just learning about like recording. And then beginning months of 2020, it's when I was like ready to start recording like some of the songs I had. I started working on 4 of them between like January to March, and then obviously COVID hit, the pandemic, so that kind of shut everything down. So I hadn't really gone those, because like I had an idea for how I wanted the album, inspired like by George Harrison and like the Jeff Lynne production of like the late 80s with like Cloud Nine, Full Moon Fever, the Wilburys albums. So I want like more like acoustic based. So then maybe like then it wasn't until I started writing stuff like maybe in April. A few songs came quickly, and then into like June, and then I had like, I guess the first proper session, I guess demo session would be like June 2020, or it was just me and the acoustic guitar, and I did maybe like vocals or guide vocals for some of them. And then I keep like a little journal, so to remind myself like when I did all this. So I know June was like the first session for this actual album, the songs that were on this album. Then I wouldn't have the next one until August, where I did more guitar and vocals. Then September I did a lot of the vocals. November, a couple of guitar ones, and then later in November I did drums for some of them. So kind of like sporadic on and off between 2020 until maybe March or August 21, before like a couple weeks before the album was released. So yeah, that was about it as like the background for it. So a lot of the songs that I had started writing before this weren't on there. Maybe a couple of them were started in 2016 or 2017, and then I just kind of like used parts of those albums. I just recycled parts of them and then to into other songs or create new songs or different arrangements.
I think that's a very kind of similar process to how Tony did his first studio album. At least the first time it was recorded, right, Tony?
Yeah, I would say so.
Mhm.
And something that you had mentioned that kind of jumps out to me is being in a band previously and having your songs not quite fit
Yeah.
the band's vision. So even though you had mentioned that this recording process, it's extended, for a little bit of time, it sounds quite cohesive. Like you did know what you were going for. Like you were saying, going for a style of production, acoustic bass. What type of music was your band doing before that?
It was a funk band, so I was the drummer in there.
Funk.
Yeah.
Okay, I like it.
Tony loves funk.
Oh, me too. So it was like I wanted this to be more like my background is, as we mentioned before we started recording this episode, was just to have like not to be stuck in one genre, but just to have like different genres like Beatles or U2 or Bowie, but band broke up for different reasons. But for this album, I remember it written like I wanted it to be like to look at albums as like OK Computer or Binaural or Nebraska or some of the work that like Brian Eno and Daniel Lanois did with U2 and even Daniel Lanois' albums that he did with Bob Dylan, Oh Mercy and Time Out of Mind. Wanted like that, I guess a darker feel, I guess probably just because of the times that we were living in 2020.
Yeah,
And then
I wanted to mention really quick. When you said "Okay, computer," I was a little surprised, but then one of the notes listening to the album, it does have a lot of darker tones, and I was going to ask if that had to do with the current state of the world with COVID.
yeah,
I
like
thought a lot of the lyrics were inspired by that, which I guess "Okay, computer," the time it came out, it. I don't know. I wouldn't have made that comparison until you mentioned it, but now I totally see it.
yeah, like the first song, How Long, was definitely inspired by that album, especially their song Exit Music. I kind of had that like maybe in my head.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. Um, and I one of the things I was going to ask is, um, we mentioned it probably I think on the past episodes that you did with us earlier this year, but your you would say your main instrument or your first instrument was drums, right?
Correct.
And what I was surprised with the album is there's actually a couple songs without drums.
Yeah, so that basically the album, how it came out to be. Like I said what I was like aiming for, like the kind of production style and what I wanted to be. So the way the album ended up basically being more of a folk album, acoustic album, was I was having trouble figuring out like how like the song should go, like their approach, like kind of instrumentation. And then when I kept like playing the songs like to myself on like acoustic guitar, I'm like, these songs just kind of sound, they just seem um fine the way they are, kind of how Bruce's Nebraska ended up being, like that, how that story went. Like when he had the songs written, he had the demo tape, and when the band started, he said they sounded fine with the band, but they didn't have like their same like power and potency that the demo tape had. So I kind of like stuck with that mindset of having them mostly be acoustic and just throw in some instrumentation.
You mentioned Nebraska, and I was one of the things I wanted to really point out was I think um the first time I heard Age of Fear, I was
Mhm.
like, it gave me like Nebraska vibes, especially State Trooper.
Western civilization is under attack.
Ding 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 ding.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, this has to be like his take on State Trooper. I'm like, it just
Yeah.
has that like darker, not only just like the darker chord progression, but just like the strumming style of the song itself.
Yeah, that one definitely started as like the complete opposite musically. It sounded more like fuck, I don't know. I'll use the word jolly, like sounded more upbeat, like but like a lot of the lyrics I started that in 2016 based off like a Rolling Stone article I read that was called like Living in the Age of Fear, and I was like, that's an excellent title. And then when I had trouble like finishing that musically, I was like, I think that's like when I was listening to Nebraska, I was like, oh, I could probably just do that instead for State Trooper.
I do have to ask. There's like a reverse guitar lead that goes on in there.
Yeah.
How did you get that sound effect? Because I know you said you recorded in your cousin's studio. Was that like through pedals or like post production?
Oh yes, I wanted something like the Beatles had done, like I'm Only Sleeping or Tomorrow Never Knows, of having that backwards effect. So I think I used I forgot what the pedal was that my cousin has. That's basically I was just like fooling around, like just doing whatever. So that's how like it just came to be with backwards. I didn't realize until after he said that you could just do like a normal solo, and then he could have just reverse it. But I was like, oh, I don't know how I can do that. So I just did whatever while I was plugged into the effects pedal.
Yeah, that's interesting because I've never recorded in a studio on like YouTube, but I do have a song that I've worked on where I played a solo and then, like Tony was saying, in post, then put it in reverse. But I've never done it the other way around. And that sounds harder to me for some reason.
I guess that's the way like most people have done it, is just do a normal solo and then they do it and then they reverse it after.
Is that what you've done, Tony?
I don't know if I've ever actually recorded, anything or, produced something where it's like a reverse section or, part, sorry. But my friend is lending me his, a reverb pedal that has like a reverse reverb on it. That's pretty fun to mess around with. And it is a little trippy trying to play along while listening to like how it sounds as it's reversing.
Yeah.
It's easy to kind of sometimes like maybe overthink it or whatnot. But what I liked when you did the effect in your song is that you just kind of let the effect stand on its own, Like
yeah, I just wanted to sprinkle it in and not go too crazy.
Right. I remember. Are you into Hendrix at all?
Yeah.
So the insane guitarist Eric Johnson, he was covering the "Are You Experienced" the song, and he actually played the reverse guitar solo in real time using like volume swells and everything.
Oh wow!
Yeah, it is pretty incredible. I can send you a clip later of it. But sorry, I digress.
No, that's fine. That'd be awesome to check out.
One of the things that I wanted to bring up too was, I felt that your album, even on the songs that aren't, they don't have the drums or, they're more acoustic based. To me, it's like the lyrics really stand out. And I know that a lot of that has to do with your influences that we've already talked about before, but I got a lot of Bob Dylan vibes from the album. Is that a safe thing to say?
Oh, that's pretty safe to say.
I like even just like the song title, the last song on the album. Like I just read that and I was like, that sounds like a Bob Dylan
Oh yeah, that whole song basically just was written after I did one of my Dylan full catalog listens, especially after Rough and Rowdy Ways.
And there was a couple, like I noticed you in that song, you paid tribute to your influences,
Essentially.
which I really enjoyed. Like, you know, you were name dropping like, you know, Neil Young and Dylan and, you know, the Beatles. And I've always wanted to do that in a song, but I don't know, I've never been able to make it fit like you've done or like other artists have done, where it sounds like natural.
It was just basically an exercise and just not thinking too much and just having fun with words, basically.
And I think Tony and there was one line, not in that song, but in another song, we had a question about.
In grocery store.
Yes.
No, is it in grocery stores and Circus?
What's the
No,
line?
I think it's in Circus, Tony.
Oh yeah, you're right. It's in Circus. I'm sorry. The line being, "I feel like such a fake with the ribeye steak."
I feel like a fake with this ribeye steak.
That was just a placeholder line until I could figure something else out, and then it just stayed. That was also basically off advice John Lennon had given to George when George was working on something. Forgot what line it was, but John said like, just use something in the way she moves attracts me like a cauliflower as a placeholder.
Oh.
That's what the line basically was, a placeholder, and then I just couldn't think of anything else. I was like, I'll just leave it on there.
But speaking of grocery store too, that one, the lyrics, they're very like that. That was a song too where when I was listening to it, I was, because I listened to it when you originally released it a couple years ago, but even just like today, I was like, oh, this definitely has to be like about the times, like about like COVID times. Like,
oh yeah,
you mentioned wearing a mask, and it seemed like the song grocery store was like in response to people going out and like purchasing all the toilet paper and tissues that they could.
Everybody's in the grocery store, getting everything they can hoard. Toilet paper, wipes, tissues, masks. Will the money come out of my ass?
Which I appreciated that song because in 2020, I was just promoted at the grocery store I worked at, and it was just chaos that entire year and a half.
Oh wow.
So that song really like connected with me personally.
Yeah.
Same here. I was working at Target, and
oh, that's right.
Good
yeah.
Lord, yeah.
Yeah, that one and How Long were both written Easter Sunday night.
Oh, interesting.
Well, I had How Long, I think. It started, I was like the first part of a song I was working on that was also inspired by OK Computer, but I couldn't like figure out what else. I was like, well, I like this first part, so I'll just keep it at that and just 2 chords. And then Grocery Store, I just really, that riff came in, the chord progression came quick, and so did the words.
Now, I do want to point out to Tony that I actually got to hear, I don't know if at the time it was a demo or if you already had to start recording it for this session. I remember you sending me a clip of Fly Like a Dove, actually.
Sunday morning on the green.
Yeah.
Before the album came out. So I just wanted to brag to Tony.
That might have been like right around when I first started writing it.
Yeah, so I remember. So when I heard that song, I think when I saw that song title, I recognized it. But that's one of my favorites on the album too. And I don't know if it's just because I'd heard it prior.
Oh, thank you.
Like the melody, like instantly gets stuck in my head.
I really like the kind of the crisp arpeggiation with the electric guitar.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
I think it fills out really nicely.
I think every electric guitar that is on this album, I think is played perfectly. Like, it's not overdone. And I don't know, I haven't had the balls like you guys to release a full album. And I think something keeping me back is I tend to kind of what you were saying, Chris, like, and I know Tony can relate to this, like when you like have a song you're working on and you think it's done, but then you felt like there's a need to add more to it. And it's like,
Guilty.
when is the song, like, when is it done? Like, when should it be considered finished? And I feel like on this album, like, every electric guitar part is like thoughtfully placed, and it never feels like it's overdone.
Oh, thank you. That's what I was going. I was like, because I did everything on it, so I was like, it also played to my lack of guitar skills. So I was like, just thinking about like something that either George Harrison or The Edge would have done, or even Mike Campbell. Nothing too like crazy or difficult, just fits the song.
So like Tony, you did all the instrumentation, right, on the album?
Yeah, I had my friend Ishan do some guitar harmonies on this one track, and then my friend did the drums. He performed it on an E-kit.
Well, thank you for that information, Tony, but I was asking Chris.
I'm
I
so
said
sorry.
I said
you
like
said my
Tony.
name.
Yeah,
No,
it sounded like you were asking Tony.
Oh no,
Yeah,
no.
yeah.
No, Tony,
I was like,
obviously,
okay.
no, Tony, obviously I know because we did your episode already. No.
I didn't know if you were
meant,
trying to get some background or.
maybe I misspoke. I meant to say, like Tony, you did all the instrumentation, and I meant to say like, right, like ask it in a question. I was clarifying that Chris did all the instrumentation.
But yes, I did all the instrumentation, which explains why there's no bass guitar on the album.
Yeah, which is interesting. I wonder if Tony, when I was listening to it again, I was like wondering if Tony if it was going to pick up on that, because Tony's like first instrument was bass. But I found like I don't know, I didn't like, maybe because I do listen, like, you know, I know Tony's not listening to Nebraska by Bruce, but like because I've heard albums like that where there is like no bass guitar, like I didn't really like feel like there was a lack of it.
Yeah, I'm a huge Elliott Smith fan, and he's got some songs without bass. And listening to your album, Chris, it never really crossed my mind like, where's the bass? Is the bass gonna come in? And in fact, there's a few songs in a row where you don't have drums, and I'm not even thinking about it. And then when I hear drums come in on like the next song, I'm like, oh, sweet, drums. Yeah, I feel like, I don't know, I feel like I suppose sparse instrumentation works really well with these songs, especially because, the lyrics seem to be like a big focus too.
Yeah, I think that's what it was. A lot of it was to focus on the lyrics. And another album that I had in mind, like Nebraska, was Neil Young's Hitchhiker, which came out in 2017, but was shelved in like 1976. So I listened to that one a lot, just the strength of the songs, of just like the voice and the acoustic guitar.
Yeah, that's a very solid Neil Young album.
Although, Grocery Store, I had like Talking Heads in mind when I wrote that.
You know what? I actually doesn't completely surprise me, because like, I don't know, like lyrically, it seems very
yes.
David Burns. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know, like there's some Talking Head songs. And Tony he's in the Talking Heads, but Tony's more into like Remain in Light era.
I only really know Remain in Light and
which
what is it? Slippery. What is that one called?
Speaking in
tongues. Speaking in tongues. Yeah,
it has Slippery People on it. Yeah.
Yeah,
that's right.
But like, I feel like earlier Talking Heads, like lyrically, like there'll be songs where he's just talking about like TV the whole time.
Yeah, so it would be definitely something like that you would hear on more songs about
that's what I was thinking.
Food, or even oh god, it's my favorite one too, and I'm drawing a blank on it.
The first one?
No, the one between the one right.
Fear of Music.
Yes, Fear of Music.
I love Fear of Music. Yeah. Which
it's sad I would probably to blank on the title.
I want to give that album to Tony, because that one kind of has like, I don't know if it's kind of concept album-y a little bit,
Mhm.
like the fact that like most of the song titles is just like one word,
Yeah.
and it was supposed to be like fear of and then the song title.
Oh, okay.
At least that's what I like had heard before, like fear of electric guitars, fear of air, fear of heaven. There's a couple
Yeah.
that don't work, like Life During Wartime or E Zimbra, but like that was like kind of the concept. I do think Tony would really dig that album, um, especially because Tony likes. I know Living Color. They do a cover of Memories Can't Wait.
Oh, that's
Which I
awesome.
didn't even know that was a Talking Head song. I mean, I was familiar with the Living Color version, but
But yeah, no, I'm glad you brought up Talking Heads because like I kind of have that too. And I know you're talking. That's not a band you and I talk about a bunch, but because they're a band that I've kind of just over the couple of years gotten around to listening to all their albums, and
Hmm.
they just saw. I mean, I went and saw the Stop Making Sense.
Oh, you saw that too?
Yeah,
Oh,
their concert DVD like that they recently re
yeah, for its 40th anniversary in theaters.
they kind of retouched up and re-released it
Oh, it's
in movie
fantastic.
theater. Yeah, I love it.
I
Um
mean, it would be fun to like whenever I do play out to do that one and come up with a Talking Heads arrangement
yeah,
for that
that
live.
would be fun. Um, but I kind of wanted to ask too, like, and I'm sure Tony has a ton of questions because you record this in a studio, like you said,
Hmm.
and your cousin engineered it, right?
Yeah.
Now is that a studio that because correct me, I know like one of your I don't know if it's the same cousin or another cousin like is in a band, right?
Yeah, my cousin.
Um,
Yeah,
so
that's
is that like the
same
studio
one. Yeah.
he does his recording in?
Yeah. And with that, I rent out one of the rooms in. It's like the garage, which I'm in right now.
Oh, perfect. It's not because I'm sure Tony was going to ask questions too. Because like Tony, as we've talked before, like his album was recorded with more like home equipment, his laptop and stuff like that.
Hmm.
But he just recently recorded in a studio.
yeah,
Um,
my friend, he's going to college to be an audio engineer.
Hmm.
So for one of his assignments, he had to record someone else.
Okay.
So he was like, "Hey, do you want to record?" And so we had a 4-hour booking. So I just picked a song that was mostly just going to be acoustic guitar, a few electric leads, and vocals.
Yep.
And so, we did that whole process. It was a lot of fun. Um, and so I'm curious now that I've had some recording experience in a studio, what was it like for you? What was kind of the process? Maybe how long did it take? Yeah.
So like I said, it was like on and off, like a day in this month, a day in following month. Let me see my notes.
so you didn't have to worry so much about like I have to get this done this week, right? You're able to kind of do pieces here and there.
Yeah, a lot of it was just like, all right, I'll just lay down the acoustic guitar and just do like a guide track of like the vocal as well. Um, and then every day is like I would practice it, and then like I'd ask my cousin, "Oh, do you have availability at this time, like on this day or whatever?" He'd say, "Yeah," and then that's when I would just like in the lead up to it, I would practice it myself, spend like a few hours here and there on those days, just doing a few songs. Part of the struggle was I would have them like how should like the song go or what else can I add to it? And so eventually the making this album, like in the struggle of like figuring out like what should be on the songs is what led me to like make the switch over to like the MacBook and have GarageBand and like get like myself like a couple microphones and guitar stand and like a Focusrite just to like work on demos myself and not like waste valuable studio time and money just like struggling to figure out how a song should go.
Right.
Yeah, because that's
Basically,
I know Tony and I like well, like I said, I've never released anything besides a couple songs here and there, but like Tony and I know that feeling very well of like doing the demos and like when is it time to make this the finished product, you know?
Right. And
But
like part of that would be like Fly Like a Dove. Um, like I wanted drums on it, but when I got to the chorus, I couldn't figure out like what would be appropriate. And I was struggling with it, so I said, you know what, screw it. I'll just have it as acoustic with some electric guitar on it, and that'll be it. And like
yeah,
the way I play the basically the verses was really uh like all Neil Young.
yeah, was it weird to go from like, you know, playing drums as your main instrument and you know, in your band that's, you know, that was your role to like writing songs like on acoustic guitar and recording them?
Well, I had always wanted to play guitar, like especially as a kid. Like I remember like one Christmas, someone gave me like a toy acoustic guitar, so I'd like be in the basement and pretend I was like in the Beatles. I was like just strumming the guitar, not even knowing how to play it. So, but I didn't start playing guitar until senior year of high school.
That's kind of like I feel like Tony with like the bass. He was pretending he was like in the Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Mhm.
He even had the sock.
There you go. TMI, but you know,
um, but no, yeah, like I think it's cool because you guys like. I mean, I consider myself multi instrumental too,
mhm.
but the drums are that's like out of all the instruments, like that's the instrument I play the least. I mean, I don't currently have a drum set. Tony and I, when I was living with Tony and our parents, we had like a cheap drum set.
Mhm.
Um, and I would play that a little bit, but then I haven't played since. Where I know Tony, you kind of play those drums still, don't you?
Well, no, I ended up taking them to Ishan's because we were trying to
Oh, that's
record
right.
them, and it just I have not brought them back yet because there's no space in the garage. Shout out to Dad for that. Um, but sometimes I'll mess around with my friend's e-kit when we do like a rehearsal.
Yeah, I was recording drums. I feel like as someone who's not recorded in a studio, I always hear like people saying that's the hardest thing to record is drums. Is that true?
Yeah, it could be, especially you got the metronome going and you don't want to like screw up. Although on this album I didn't use the metronome.
Really?
Yeah.
You did like Dave Grohl style, right?
Yeah, I mean, because I was just doing like I said, mostly acoustic guitar, so I didn't not even like when I did like those tracks, I use a metronome.
So, but like for the songs that have guitar and drums, what did you record first?
Oh, guitar.
Guitar? Oh,
And then I would just play to the song.
I feel like that's the opposite of what I would do if I was to do drums.
That's the opposite of like what most anyone would do. I mean, you may have like a rough track or just a guitar guide track, guitar and vocal track, just so you know like the song, and then you can
Structure.
properly do it after doing the drums. But like I said, it all started with just the acoustic guitar and vocals, and then it was figuring out what I can add to the songs. That's why some of the songs, like the drums, felt more appropriate.
And it did keep me surprised because like you said, like Fly Like a Dove, I almost felt like I was expecting drums, but then the closing track, I for some reason was not expecting the drums. So when they come in, I
Yeah,
was like, whoa.
that one's like I could just have it of 7 minutes of just me and the acoustic guitar, or I can at least, or it might have been my cousin said, well, we got to make this more interesting than just you and the acoustic guitar. So I was like, all right, I could do drums, and I was just trying to figure out how to do it. And then I just how I might have done it with brushes or like hot rod sticks that like Dave Grohl played that he used on the Nirvana Unplugged episode.
Yeah, I was gonna ask about that because I did notice. Yeah, the drums were more like a snare bass thing, right?
What's a hot rod stick? Is that what you said?
Yeah, they're not like Um, they're not like regular sticks. It's just like more for like quieter environment. I think some might call them like bamboo sticks, but they're like if you look up like a picture of Dave Grohl playing on the Nirvana Unplugged, you'll see what they are.
I feel like they always have like they're usually like with the red pieces on them.
Yeah, and like some kind of like sticks to them, or I forget exactly how to describe it.
Right.
Oh, and I wanted to ask you, is it I think it's the closing track. There's one song where there's harmonica too, right?
Yep, it's that one too.
Yeah, so that was I was that, and I think that was the other thing that made me think, oh, like Dylan, you
Yep,
know.
just my
But
attempt.
You know what? I don't play harmonica. So that's another instrument that, like, when I heard it, I was like jealous. I was like, oh, because I love harmonica. I mean, I love harmonica, like Neil Young songs too. But
Yeah,
um, I I don't know. Tony, do you play harmonica?
I definitely do not. I'm too scared to try
But
it.
yeah, but it's weird because like you have to like for harmonica, you have to have them like in the right key, right?
it's. I think they're based off. You got to play the harmonica. You got. It's like harmonica type that you have to have has to be in like it's like the fifth chord of like whatever chord you're playing in. So like let's say you're playing in G, and the fifth chord is C or D. I'm trying to remember
D.
now. Okay, so maybe it's the fourth chord in it. So like with G, you got to play a harmonica that's in D, I believe. I forget.
Okay, yeah, I see. I wouldn't have even thought about that. I would have just picked it up and been like, "This
Yeah,
sounds like shit. What am I
yeah,
doing
the
wrong?"
fourth or
I
fifth chord of whatever key that you're in. That's what.
yeah, I think the only time I played harmonica, it was I didn't know that, and I played it, and I was like, "Why does it sound bad? Like it doesn't fit the song." And I thought, "Am I hitting wrong notes?" But then it was like, "Oh yeah, I'm just not." Because I think our dad had a harmonica, Tony, right?
Yeah, I'm sure he has a couple that are just lying around.
Yeah, I don't know where he got them from, but
So with this album, what song? What two-part question? Which
Mhm.
song is your favorite? And then which song was the most fun to record? I imagine my guess would be a song like the closing track would be fun because there's harmonica, there's a lot of name dropping, which is fun. Or maybe a song like Midnight where there's a lot of like layering. That seems like to be the most um that has like the most overdubs, I would imagine.
Ooh, let's see. So favorite. Say grocery store might be able to answer both questions. That was a lot of fun to do. Um, that one was just like I was actually like happy with myself. I was able to like do a guitar solo on a song, so I had like pride in that one. Um, Circus as well. That one came pretty quickly. Um, I don't know, like the last song, Mantle Shelf, it was fun. I was just like I said, it was just me like goofing around having fun, but it was like a bitch to sing so much. That's why like after I think 4 or 5 verses, there's like an instrumental break just so I could like I'm not a singer, so it's like, all right, I'm gonna have a break after these, and then like after it's like after five, then it's like I forgot how many in a row was like, oh shit. I had to like do part of that song again.
I do want to say I'm glad Tony brought up Midnight because I think instrumentally that one is my favorite song. Because of like the layering you did on it, and that's also the one that not a specific song, but it gave me major Neil Young vibes.
Oh, interesting.
Huh, I don't
Like
know if I
kind
would have
of
said that.
really.
At least not right off the bat.
I don't know. Like it reminded me of like when Neil does his like softer acoustic, round and round,
Yeah, I could see that.
um, or maybe like I'm thinking even like later like Harvest Moon kind of vibes.
Okay.
Like I don't know, it just
I
gave me
never
the
would have thought that. I might have written that on like a snow day or something. I just remember it was like cold. I try
that was the inspiration for Midnight was cold.
Those are low
Yeah.
temperatures.
I might have had like that first part, like it might have been literally at midnight, like one night that I wrote it.
Oh, and that inspired the title because it's an instrumental song.
Yeah, and then God, I forget. It might like the other part might have just been like on a snow day where I was like, oh, let's try this, and then I think that's like when I started learning how to use GarageBand as well, was putting that song together.
Oh, which makes sense because it has the multiple, like Tony said, like the overdubs.
Yeah.
I did want to ask a question kind of unrelated to the songs, but to the album is, and this will be harder for our since this is an audio only podcast, but your album cover, it has a typewriter,
Yep.
which that gave me major Eddie Vedder vibes
Okay.
because
You're not wrong.
always, I mean, even is it binaural or right act where like the lyrics, like
Both.
both where they're typed up the lyric sheet with
I think all the albums since binaural.
have been like that.
Yeah. Yeah, that was my little nod to Eddie.
Yeah, so I really dug that. But then what's been driving me crazy, and it's just because it's a little hard to read. I kind of tried to zoom in on my phone. You have like a sheet in the typewriter with the sheet, like there's words on the typewriter.
Yep.
And it looks like it's like lyrics or like a poem to something, but I don't think is it to any of the songs on the album?
No.
That's what I thought, because I was going through the words that I could read, and I was listening to the lyrics, and I was like, I don't think this is for one of the songs on the album.
No, that just would have been something like what Dylan did on his early albums. Like if you look at the back of the albums, just whatever. I'm sure like all the stuff on his albums relate to content on the album, and I think now that I think about it, a lot of that stuff that I wrote on that piece of paper probably is like an extension of some of the themes of the album.
Gotcha. I think that's just a cool little like Easter egg.
Yeah, I'm sure people would be able to read it if it was on a vinyl.
Yeah. And then, well, I have one more last question, but it's kind of like a wrap up question. Tony, I don't know if you had any more questions or things you wanted to point out.
No, I think we've really been covering all the questions. Seems like you and I have some similar thoughts on the album.
Because my like kind of last question was, if you have plans for like a second album, if you've been working on songs since, and if it's going to be in any like different type of style, like is it going to be more drum based, or I'm just curious where you're planning on going next, assuming there is like a next album.
Yes, definitely being working on the songs. I'd say roughly right now I'd say 10 that would be like ready to record. So it's like started writing a couple, I think, while I was working on this album, but then like as I finished up, and then hate to say like I had a writer's block as an excuse, but I was just having trouble writing, and then ended up going back to school to get my master's, so that put like a major like pause on like the writing. And then I would like, if I had like a free weekend between semesters, I would maybe try to work on one of them. But I was gonna try to like revisit what I had started before recording the Circus, and then I got like mad and didn't really think they were worthy of it. So like I put them aside, and that kind of like freed me up to start working on some more. See it. But yeah, the writing has just been on and off for the most part of this year, and working on the demos as well.
That's kind of the hardest part sometimes is just finding the time, isn't it? I know for Tony, that's sometimes what it comes down to is just finding the time to record or to work on the demos.
Yeah, I find like myself sometimes I'll like sit down to work on something and I could spend an hour just kind of listening to the thing on loop, just trying to figure out what to do.
Right.
Um, so I totally get the writer's block. It happens.
And part of it's like I try not to write the words first because then so I have to like come up with music after, but sometimes I do that and then it's like I drive myself crazy trying to find like the appropriate music and working what do you call it, like working it out to fit how I'm like singing the words in my head, like rhythmically, I should say.
Yeah, I've been actually writing words first for some reason, and it's hard because you have phrases that you try to fit on a song. Like once you make the music, it's I feel like it's harder to do it that way. It's definitely easier to have the song and then like come up with the words, but I don't know. Lately, it's almost like I write like poems or something in my head, and then try to come up with the music in my head, and that's usually where it falls apart for me is when I sit down with a guitar or piano and try to come up with music to fit the lyrics.
Yeah,
I
that's how Mantle Shelf happened to be. It was like I just writing the lyrics. I'm like, all right, we'll have a bunch of nonsense. Let me just do three chords. And that's it.
I remember like reading like an article or like an interview from the Doors, and someone like asked Jim Morrison why he was the singer of the band. Kind of a weird question to ask a singer of a
Yeah.
band, but and he was saying he's like, oh yeah, because I write all the songs. And
Yeah.
at first I was like, well, come on, you got great musicians there. And then in a different interview, Ray Manzarek was like, yeah, Jim would come to us, and he would sing us the song. He would sing us the lyrics with the melody, and we would make the music around it.
Yeah, they had to figure
I
out what he's like, what key he's singing in.
Right, and I'm like you guys. I find it's way easier, and I feel like I have better results doing the music first. But I don't know. Sometimes the inspiration for lyrics comes first. I don't know.
Exactly. I
Yeah,
think.
that's why I wanted to do these episodes because I find every songwriter has a different approach,
Mm-hmm.
and that's kind of what I really appreciate. Like that's why I try to listen to as much like every year I try to like I feel like get into a different band, even if it's an older band, just because I enjoy hearing people's different approaches to even if it's the same style of music.
Yeah.
Like even if we can maybe group like Bruce, Petty, Neil, Dylan together, all four of them have like so different like ways of doing a maybe similar type of song.
Exactly.
And I think it's really cool that you and Tony like kind of was your albums were basically just you guys. Well, Tony, he did have someone drum on his album, his friend Bryce, but like mostly you guys just came up with the arrangements and songs yourselves, kind of a one man, like I said, you guys each had someone help like engineer the album, but I always love to see someone when it's like just Eddie Vedder doing the Into the Wild soundtrack.
Right.
So I hope one day, I think we'll eventually do an episode with my forthcoming album if I ever release it.
No, for sure.
But yeah, I'm in awe of you guys to being able to have a vision and then like actually make it a reality, and actually be able to release it.
And
Yeah.
when we do, sorry, go
No,
ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I was gonna say, and when we do Rico's episode for his album, the first question will be, "What took you so long?"
Yeah,
And I'll say it's because I was too busy talking to you guys.
that's true.
I did have something I wanted to ask you, Chris. I'm not sure if you quite touched upon it when Rico was asking about your next album in the works.
Mhm.
Is there like some album styles you're going for? I know with Circus you mentioned OK Computer, like Dylan and stuff. Is there kind of like an album you could compare it to or anything?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna answer when I have remembered. Uh, no, but probably at least go with the same approach and look to like those late 80s Jeff Lynne stuff that he did with George Harrison and Tom Petty and the Wilburys, where like the acoustic, I still like wanted to have like acoustic guitar be prominent, but definitely more, well, not prominent, but just like um but yeah, maybe the better comparison would be like Wildflowers.
Oh, love me some Wildflowers.
Yeah. But yeah, it'd definitely be much more like way more instrumentation.
And then maybe your third or fourth album, you'll do your riot act.
I don't know.
I mean, maybe not politically, but maybe that folk rock sound.
I mean, this is what I know. Definitely one of the songs on here definitely has that folk rock that Tony was originally thinking about. And more
Right,
like
birds and
yeah, like more like definitely one of them has like that more jangly sound to it.
you busted out the Rickenbacker for it.
I wish.
Yeah, if I had unlimited money, I think that's like the first guitar I would buy.
Just had to just overdub the guitar line just on different parts of the neck. And you get
Yeah.
that sound.
Yeah, that's true. Well, Chris, we got to thank you again for being on this episode and giving us your time and talking over your album, which we are going to put we're going to put links to Chris's album in the description.
Mm-hmm.
So if our listeners want to go listen to it and buy it, it'll be a link to his Bandcamp account.
Yeah, that's where you could find it.
And
I haven't gone to the streamers yet.
but you do have I believe you still have a Facebook page, right? That they can follow.
Yeah.
So I'll put a link to that too. I'll link that as well. That way, down the road when you go to release your maybe an upcoming single to your next album, that's where they'll be able to get the news for that.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely.
So I'll put that in the link below as well. Not below. I'm saying it like this is a YouTube video, but
In the
yeah,
info.
Please like,
Yeah.
comment, rate, and subscribe.
Yes, all that.
And then well, I mean, we're definitely gonna hopefully, the three of us will be able to get together again to do some future episodes, that Pearl Jam set list game and talk about some artists Tony and I need some schooling on. So so definitely listeners, check out Chris's album Circus.
Thank you very
And-
much.
Oh yeah, we love having these conversations and
Always a pleasure to be talking with you.
Definitely same.
and until then, we hope everyone takes care and you'll be hearing from us soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.